All right, so get this. Today we are diving into Maale Adumim.
You know, you send over that Nefesh B'Nefesh page,
Right?
the one they showed to new immigrants, plus like some Wikipedia deep cuts, even blog posts from a resident talking about a local's perspective.
Yeah.
It's like we're about to meet a city with this split personality,
Yeah.
one that's sparked a lot of debate.
And that's why we're here to go past the headlines, and really understand Maale Adumim.
Okay.
We're talking about an Israeli city in the West Bank. Geographically, it's like basically a suburb of Jerusalem.
Right.
But politically, well, it's considered a settlement by most of the world.
Right.
And that, as you can imagine, gets complicated.
Complicated is an understatement. It's fascinating how, even just looking at a map, you can feel that tension.
Yeah, absolutely. Maale Adumim sits right on the edge of the Judean desert, about a 15-minute drive east of Jerusalem. But that location, it's strategically crucial for both Israelis and Palestinians, which puts it at the heart of this whole debate about, what a peaceful future,
Right.
What would a peace agreement even look like?
Right.
It's a huge question.
Okay, so location, got it.
Yeah.
But then, like, we add in the human element.
Right.
You've got Nefesh B'Nefesh talking about this welcoming community for newcomers.
Yeah.
Almost like it's just another suburb with, great amenities. But then you've got Wikipedia and organizations like B'Tselem bringing up concerns about how the land was acquired and the impact on Palestinian land rights.
Yeah.
It feels like we're looking at two completely different places.
And that's what makes this deep dive so important.
Right.
To understand this, we have to go back to Maale Adumim's beginnings.
Okay.
It wasn't like some accident. This was the 1970s, right after that Yom Kippur War. And people like Yisrael Galilee, a major figure in the settlement movement, they were thinking strategically. They believed establishing a presence east of Jerusalem was like vital for Israel's security.
Basically saying we need to be here to prevent another attack.
Exactly. But it wasn't just about, military strategy.
Okay.
This was also when the Gush Emunim movement, a group of religious Zionists, were gaining influence.
Right.
They believed in settling the biblical heartland, and for them, that included Maale Adumim.
And that's where this whole idea of facts on the ground comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to talk about it, but they went out and created a reality on the ground, something that would be really hard to undo.
You got it. And this wasn't some theoretical exercise either.
Right.
It had real life consequences for the people living in that area, like the Jeshurun Bedouin tribes,
Right.
who had been grazing their flocks there for generations.
You sent over that picture from 1975, the one with Israeli troops physically carrying Gush Emunim members away after they tried to establish themselves there.
Yeah.
Talk about a powerful image of that tension.
And it's those human stories, those costs that often get lost in the bigger political arguments, right?
Yeah.
Maale Adumim becomes this microcosm of the entire Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where these huge historical forces play out in the lives of everyday people.
Which is exactly why we're diving deep to make sense of it all. This wasn't just about the Bedouins, though, right? This gets into the whole debate about the West Bank's future.
You're hitting on a critical point.
Yeah.
This is where Maale Adumim's location becomes central to understanding the E1 project.
Okay.
Imagine drawing a line connecting Maale Adumim directly to Jerusalem.
Okay.
That strip of land is E1.
And you're saying that one little strip is a huge deal?
It's a major point of contention.
Right.
For Israel, developing E1 would solidify their control over Maale Adumim and create this uninterrupted block of Israeli control from Jerusalem eastward. Makes sense from their perspective strategically and even demographically.
There's always a but, isn't there?
Right. To Palestinians and much of the international community, E1 is a huge problem. They see it as a fatal blow to the idea of a contiguous, viable Palestinian state. It's a line in the sand, essentially cutting the West Bank in half.
So we have this one piece of land that's absolutely crucial to both sides' visions for the future, which makes talking about it, let alone finding a solution, incredibly difficult. It feels like that's the story of this entire conflict, isn't it?
It's one of the core issues.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And it's why understanding Maale Adumim is so crucial. But it's not just a political football.
Right.
People live there, have built lives there.
Exactly. We have those photos you sent, plus the blog posts from that resident. Don't step in a cautionary tale, the official book of excuses. Life there definitely comes with a sense of humor.
It's easy to get caught up in the geopolitics and historical debates. But at the end of the day, people need to go grocery shopping, get the kids to school, and find moments of joy, even in a place as complex as this.
So it's not quite the picture we usually see in the news.
Rarely that simple. To really understand Maale Adumim, we have to meet the people who call it home.
All right, give us the inside scoop. What's the vibe? Who lives there? And what's it actually like to walk down the street?
Well, remember that image of a quiet suburb with good schools?
Yeah.
There's truth to that.
Okay.
Maale Adumim has over 38,000 residents,
Wow.
and it's growing. And get this, over 70% of them are secular.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That totally challenges the stereotype of settlements being mostly religious.
It does. Many residents choose Maale Adumim for more practical reasons. Housing is relatively affordable compared to Jerusalem. There is a strong community and a good quality of life.
You sent a photo of someone's backyard, talk about a gorgeous view. Looks incredibly peaceful.
It's beautiful, and they have all the amenities: malls, a sports center, a music conservatory, even an art museum designed by Moshe Kastel, a famous Israeli artist.
Oh, wow.
They really prioritize education. 21 schools and a whopping 80 kindergartens.
80. Okay, they are serious about being family friendly.
They are, but here's where things get interesting. Remember E1 and its potential impact.
Yeah.
That very same project, meant to connect Maale Adumim to Jerusalem, has also created a housing shortage within the city itself.
Wait, what? How does that work?
Because of the uncertainty surrounding E1, there's a freeze on new construction in Maale Adumim. They're in this strange limbo, almost too successful for their own good.
Wow.
It's put a real strain on the housing market and left some residents feeling stuck.
So you've got a city built on this idea of expansion that's now struggling to handle its own growth.
Yeah.
That's ironic.
Exactly. And it highlights just how complicated life in Maale Adumim is. You can have modern conveniences, a thriving community, and still be dealing with these huge geopolitical forces and uncertainties.
This is why I love these deep dives. You start thinking, something, and bam, there's this whole other layer. It's like we're uncovering this hidden city, right?
It is. It is. Every layer reveals something new, something that challenges our assumptions.
Yeah.
And speaking of layers, do you know that Maale Adumim isn't just about modern life?
Okay.
It's actually surrounded by some incredible historical and archaeological sites.
Yeah, the Wikipedia article mentioned something about a monastery and an inn, which caught my eye. There's history there.
Oh, there's history everywhere. We're talking sites dating back to the Byzantine era and even earlier.
Wow.
The monastery of Martyrius, for instance, it was a major monastic center in the Judean desert. Can you imagine the lives that were lived within those walls, centuries ago?
It's amazing to think about. And then that inn, the Good Samaritan Inn, is that the one from the Bible?
That's the one, or at least that's what tradition tells us.
Wow.
It's known as Khan el-Hatruri, and it really shows how history is still alive in this region.
Right.
I mean, that structure might have sheltered travelers on the very same road where the parable of the Good Samaritan took place.
Right.
It's mind-blowing.
It's like you can almost feel those stories in the air. And it seems like that connection to the past isn't just limited to ancient history either. Didn't you mention something about art and culture in Maale Adumim?
Absolutely. It's not just about preserving the past. There's a real appreciation for creative expression there.
Right.
We touched on the Moshe Kastel Museum, but you sent over some information about a sculpture garden. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
They have the Tree of Life. They're the world's largest artistic representation of an olive tree.
Yeah, I saw a picture of that. It's massive. Okay, you're right. There's definitely more to Maale Adumim than just politics and controversy. It has this whole other dimension of beauty and history you don't always hear about. What else can you tell us about these hidden gems? What makes Maale Adumim tick beyond the headlines?
Well, why don't we take a trip to one of the city's most interesting neighborhoods, Mitzpe Nevo.
Okay.
Remember those blog posts you like? The
Yeah.
ones with titles like Don't Step in It?
Yeah.
They were written by a Mitzpe Nevo resident.
Get out. I knew those posts had a certain Mitzpe Nevo energy. What is it about this neighborhood that makes it so unique?
Well, for starters, it's perched on cliffs on the northern edge of the city.
Okay.
We're talking breathtaking panoramic views of the Judean desert,
Yeah.
even Jerusalem in the distance.
Those pictures you sent are incredible. You can practically see forever from those houses.
Imagine waking up to that view every morning, right?
Wow.
But the scenery isn't the only thing that sets Mitzpe Nevo apart. It has a distinct character, a little different from the rest of Maale Adumim.
Different how?
It's known for being more religiously observant.
Okay.
In fact, they have signs at the entrance asking people to be, respectful of the Sabbath and avoid driving through on Saturdays.
Wow, you don't see that every day. That reminds me of that note in the geocaching entry you found.
Right.
Someone mentioned that that finding the cache should be a Sabbath observant activity.
It's a small detail, but it really speaks to the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And here's something I find interesting. Even though it's known for being religiously observant, there's a real effort in Mitzpe Nevo to be inclusive and welcoming to everyone.
Really? How so?
They have a crowdfunding campaign happening right now to make the neighborhood's facilities more accessible and safe.
Yeah.
They're raising money to build ramps for wheelchairs and strollers, install better lighting, and even create a more welcoming entrance to the neighborhood.
That's amazing. They're taking that idea of community and making it a reality for everyone, no matter their background or ability.
You got it. And that's what makes Mitzpe Nevo such a perfect example of the bigger picture we're talking about.
Right.
It's a place of contrasts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strong beliefs, a desire for inclusivity. It's a place where people are working together to build something better for themselves and their kids.
It's funny. We started this deep dive talking about strategic importance, contested history, all these weighty topics. And now here I am thinking about a community garden, accessible playgrounds, and those incredible desert views. It's amazing how these things can coexist in one place. It really makes you realize that places like Maale Adumim, they aren't just like dots on a map or headlines in the news.
Exactly. There's a human story here.
Yeah.
A tapestry woven from, history, politics, faith, and everyday life.
And it strikes me that this is what makes understanding Maale Adumim so crucial to understanding the larger conversation about Israel and the West Bank.
Absolutely. You can't separate the personal from the political.
Right.
And the stories of individuals and communities often reveal more than any political analysis ever could.
So, taking all of this into account, what can you tell us about Maale Adumim's future? What does it mean for the people who call it home?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and they're not easy to answer.
Right.
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball for these things.
Yeah.
But I do think that by, going beyond the surface, by trying to understand the complexities of Maale Adumim, its history, its people, its place within this larger conflict, we give ourselves the tools to think critically and have more productive conversations about the future.
We equipped ourselves to engage with the nuances, which is really what this deep dive is all about.
It's about asking questions.
Yeah.
Considering different perspectives.
Right.
Acknowledging that there are real, human lives at stake in these discussions.
You've given us a lot to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
Out of everything we've discussed, what stands out to you the most? What questions are you grappling with after this deep dive? It's the resilience of the human spirit that I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
Here you have this community grappling with these huge geopolitical questions, facing an uncertain future, and yet they're still finding ways to build a life for themselves and their families.
Right.
They're creating art, building communities, and looking for ways to make their corner of the world a little bit brighter.
A powerful reminder that even in the midst of conflict, life goes on. People adapt, they find hope,
Yeah.
and they strive to create a better future for themselves and their children.
Exactly. And those stories, those acts of resilience and hope, they're just as important to understanding a place like Maale Adumim as any, political debate.
It's the human element that often gets lost in the headlines, isn't it?
It really is. And it's something I hope our listener will keep in mind as they continue to, learn about Maale Adumim in this complex region.
So if you were to sum it all up, what's the one thing you would want someone who's never heard of Maale Adumim to take away from our conversation today?
That's a tough one. I think I'd want them to remember that Maale Adumim is a place of inherent contradictions.
Okay.
Just like the conflict that surrounds it. It's a place where ancient history and modern anxieties intersect, where political aspirations collide with personal dreams, and where beauty and controversy coexist in this kind of uneasy tension. It's a reminder that even in the most seemingly intractable of conflicts, there are human stories waiting to be understood.
And perhaps those stories hold a key to a better future.
Perhaps they do.
That's a powerful thought to end on. To our listener, we challenge you to look beyond the easy answers, embrace the complexities, and never stop asking questions. The more we understand about places like Maale Adumim, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges that lie ahead. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.